Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey health junkies, on this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm interviewing Sara Banta. She is the owner of Accelerated Health Products and she is a health coach, and we are going to be talking about something we haven't talked about before: the spike protein and how that's impacting your health, how iodine plays into this, and how halogens like fluoride and bromide can impact our health, and why magnesium, sodium, iodine, and even copper are needed more than ever. Sara goes into deep detail, as she always does in this podcast, to help us basically really understand what is going on with our health, with the toxins in our environment, and what we can do to help put our bodies back in balance. So, if you haven't heard Sara before on my podcast, you are in for a treat. She's a wealth of knowledge. So get a good glass of filtered water and sit down and take in this interview with Sara Banta. Let's get on with the podcast. Hey, health junkies. I have Sara Banta on again today with me, and we're going to be talking about something that I haven't really brought to full attention. I've mentioned blurbs, but today we're going to go full on into it because I've seen enough interesting things happening with the spike protein and its side effects and clots in folks. And I think it's time that we talk about it. And so I brought Sara on because she has a lot of great information on the spike protein. And I have some imaging reports that I am going to bring up, and we'll kind of put our info together to kind of give you guys what we're seeing out here and what is happening. So Sara, welcome to Health Fix Podcast.
Thanks for having me. I always love chatting with you, Jannine.
Me too. It's always good and, a refreshing conversation about all things health. So of course we briefly touch on spike proteins for like a minute when we were talking about the liver and how to help the body, get things out of the liver. But now that I'm really starting to have concrete things I'm seeing connected to spike proteins, I gotta, talk about it. So let's share with folks kind of what you've seen in that department and what you've been learning about spike proteins and the natokinases and things of that nature to help combat these things.
Yeah. So first I want to explain what the spike protein is, because a lot of people are hearing it going, maybe I should know what it is, but I kind of don't even really know what it is. Mm-hmm. And it's affecting all of us. Unless you live under a rock or in an igloo in Antarctica, we've been exposed. If you're traveling, I don't care if you have had the shot or not. Most of us have been exposed at some time. If you're going to the market or going to the mall or just being out in public, you are sharing microbiome with the people around you. And now we're doing concerts and we're going to movies and things are back to normal. And it's just like when you're sharing the germs, the flu bugs and the bacteria of other people. But what is supposed to happen is our immune system's strong and it takes care of it, right? So where the spike protein comes in, this is a crucial component of the SARS-CoV-2 virus that causes COVID-19. And this protein is responsible for the virus's ability to infect human cells. And because of that chain reaction that it's causing in the body, new unexplained health conditions are surfacing, or old ones that went dormant and that have been under control for the last 10 years are all of a sudden coming back with a vengeance. So what's going on here? So the spike protein is a glycoprotein that's comprised of two subunits, the S1 and the S2. The S1 subunit contains a receptor binding domain, which binds to the human angiotensin converting enzyme 2, which is also known as the ACE2 receptor on the surface of the human cells. The S2 subunit is responsible for the fusion of the virus with the host cell membrane, allowing the virus to enter the cell and begin replicating. So whether you got it is in the shot, yes, but you are also getting it through exposure of just getting the virus, or just being around people that have had the shot or had the virus. Now, what's happening and why it wasn't like, so black and white right when you got COVID or right when you got the shot, is that it does its work slowly and then takes over the body. And then these things come up where you can't necessarily connect them to what happened in the past. And whether it was designed that way or not, it doesn't matter. That's the reality. So what does the ACE2 do in the body? It's responsible for managing the following things, and it happens, that conversion happens in the liver, and that's why we talk about loving your liver through this whole process. But number one, insulin regulation, fluid balance, vasodilation. We're going to go through all of these in a minute. And it's anti-fibrotic, it's anti-apoptotic, so apoptosis, follicular development and ovulation, fertility, and hormones and PMS symptoms. And it helps with anti-inflammatory mechanisms in the body. So when the conversion's abnormal, there's a buildup of this angiotensin 2 leading to vasoconstriction. So anything that is constricting will show up as like heart, a heart attack is like an extreme constriction in the body, right? Or muscle cramps, that's a constriction. Things that constrict is like tightening up in the body. And Jannine, you know more about that as well. Fibrosis, so we're seeing a lot of fibroids occur, an increase in antidiuretic hormones, so we're retaining a ton of water. And just personally, so my experience, I have not had the shot. I have tested positive for COVID twice, never had any symptoms. Why? Because I truly believe the supplements that I take, the accelerated iodine and the accelerated silver, keeps the immune system strong. And so I never experienced any symptoms and was sick or anything with COVID. Same with my family members. We all tested positive at some point, but no symptoms. But what I did experience whenever I travel, whenever I'm out in public around people, a Christmas party, well, I don't go out a lot, Jannine. So when I do, it is very obvious as to what's happening, but I retain a ton of water. So my body is essentially saying, I just was exposed to something. We're not going to get you sick, Sara, but we're going to show you signs that spike protein is flaring up, right? So I will retain water. There's also an aldosterone release, which is one of your stress hormones, water and sodium retention, oxidative stress. You'll get more inflammation. You'll get more fibroids. You'll get insulin dysregulation. And so this is a big one. So whether you say you are the same person, same profile 3 years ago versus today, and you eat an apple, what we're seeing is that there's a higher release or an increased release of insulin in response to that piece of food or that apple versus 3 years ago. And insulin is a fat storing hormone. So you're having a exaggerated response with insulin to the same food. Okay, so what is that? That's causing people to go hypoglycemic because it's a higher level of an insulin response. And so it's bringing the blood sugar too low, and then they feel lightheaded. But then they're wondering, why am I gaining weight? Because insulin is telling the body to store fat. But the other thing you have to remember, take a step back. What do our bodies do when they're under threat? We want to store fat for survival. We want to protect our organs, and that fat storage is future energy to burn later on when we're being chased by the tiger and we are in a famine. So your body is going into some sort of stress response as well. And then there's also a hormonal imbalance. And, within my own household, there's been worsened PMS symptoms just from the spike protein, where the pain level during a normal cycle prior to these last 3 years, got to be careful with how I say this, was maybe a 3 to a 5. And then it went up to a 12, where it was just unbearable. Now, the beauty is that things like this, these challenges, are God's way of saying, Sarah, figure it out. You've got to find answers because the people you care about the most are suffering. And so the protocol we're going to be talking about has helped alleviate that and brought those symptoms down. So the insulin dysregulation is the biggest thing. It's manifesting in people as unexplained weight gain, hypoglycemia, water retention, inflammation, and even increased cholesterol. Jannine, I had somebody who literally said, Sarah, I am on a carnivore diet. I have been for 5 years. These were my blood tests in 2020. These are them now. Nothing's changed. My life is boring. I work out the same. Everything's the same. And my cholesterol numbers and triglycerides have shot through the roof. And there's nothing else to explain it other than the spike protein. It's crazy. So where's that cholesterol made, and where do we help it? The liver, right? We gotta love our liver. And so all of this is the organs that are affected the most are the small intestines, the ovaries and testes. And I don't have to talk about the fertility rates, do I? I mean, how many people have you known are trying to get pregnant and they can't? And testosterone levels are way down in men. Estrogen dominance is increased. So there's this perfect storm that's occurring, not just with the spike protein, but then you have the toxins coming in that I want to get into. So don't let me forget. I want to get into the toxins where in our food supply, the halogens that are coming into our body, filling our receptor sites. Then you've got the processed food and the standard American diet filled with the seed oils and the fructose, all of those increasing the uric acid in the body, which increases fatty liver, which increases insulin resistance, which compounds all of these results. So it's much worse. And so the amount of disease and mental issues and physical ailments and cancers are just skyrocketing. So you've got it hitting the spike protein, and the ACE2 is expressed in the small intestine, the ovaries and testes, the lungs, the cardiovascular system, the brain, the kidneys, and the gut. And what's so interesting is, yes, we all know that anxiety and depression are through the roof. And a lot of people are pointing to food addiction and social media and the fear of all the political stuff going on. But take all of that away, the spike protein directly affects mental health. So you have that compounded with all of these other things. It's like a firestorm for the brain and the body. So I can now go into my protocol if you want, and what we found that is really helping and turning this around.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's tell folks about that, because I think it's important to highlight all the different things, like you mentioned, how this can affect the body, but also the benefits you can have from your protocol, because I've used it on a couple of folks. And we've definitely, I mean, nattokinase in particular has been amazing. So we'll get to that in a minute, but let's have you tell folks about the protocol, and then we can kind of dive into some more chit chat on it.
Yeah. So it's funny regardless of the ailment, and people say, well, what's the one supplement I need? It's acceleradine iodine. And for the spike protein, even more so. So iodine is utilized by the endocrine system, which is the thyroid is the master endocrine gland, but it's used by the whole endocrine system to regulate estrogen production in both men and women. So this is going to help with all of the hormonal issues, the fertility issues, the estrogen dominance. but it also helps regulate the hormone imbalance that has been disrupted by the spike protein. It also is used to clean the blood so the liver can optimally produce the estrogen binding protein. So it's letting the liver do its job, which helps clean up the excess estrogens and the toxins. But then what else it does is the spike protein, if you remember me mentioning apoptosis. Mm-hmm. So apoptosis is where the body is going through and identifying damaged and weak and diseased cells that we want to kill. Oh, that cell is turning really, it's not salvageable, right? So it will kill that cell and then create new cells. But apoptosis also happens when someone's pregnant and that fetus is growing at such a high rate. So that stage, and then when a child is going through puberty, are the two most heavily apoptotic states in the body. Okay, so really important. But my theory is that because the spike protein is disrupting the natural apoptosis in the body, that's why a lot of people are saying, I had this chronic disease that was in remission for 10 years, and all of a sudden it's now flaring up with a vengeance. Why? Well, because that natural apoptosis is not occurring and your body's not doing its job. The acceleridine does this. The acceleridine triggers apoptosis. I believe, and I'd love for someone to tell me I'm wrong, it's the only element that does this on its own. So acceleridine iodine induces the apoptosis of the damaged and diseased cells and bypasses the disruption that may help reverse the damage done to the DNA by the spiked protein. And then what else the acceleridine does is it's increasing that cellular and mitochondrial health, and by increasing ATP by 18 times. And wow. That ATP is your true cellular energy. And without cellular energy, your body has no strength to do anything, right? So that is the energy for the body to go to work. It increases cellular energy, but improves the immune system. It provides a powerful antioxidant effect. It helps destroy the disease cells. It also helps break up the fatty liver that contributes to the weakened fat and protein metabolism from the spike protein. So a lot of people are recognizing that, God, when I eat now, I'm on a low carb diet. I focus on my protein and maybe some fat. And by the way, I don't recommend a high fat diet for most people.
Yeah, me either.
But they get nauseous, right? And that's, if you're getting nauseous when you're eating a fatty meal, that is actually a sign that your body, your liver and your gallbladder are having a hard time break down that fat. And this is happening from the spike protein. So the iodine helps break up the fatty liver that contributes to that. Now, we do need to incorporate the liver flushes to get everything cleaned out so that your body can start metabolizing that fat and protein. And the fatty liver is the trigger that causes a lot of the other metabolic diseases. And we'll go into that in a minute. But the acceleridine also is antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, antiparasitic. It kills foreign pathogens. It was known to be used during the Spanish flu pandemic in 1918. It was used across the board as an antibiotic before antibiotics came about. So you do the math on that one. Yeah. And it's also helps. So with the thyroid. So the other part we're seeing is a lot of people are becoming hypothyroid within the last 3 years. And I think it's this perfect storm, not just the spike protein, but the processed foods that have become normal food. And I believe the statistic is that 65% of children's food consumption is processed food, and it's
Oof.
not real food, 65%. So what that's telling me is that it's normalized to be eating things in a package. So if you need to unwrap something, or if you need to look at the back label and it actually has a back label, that is processed food, guys. That is not real food. Try to stick to food that doesn't need a back label. An orange doesn't need a back label, right? A piece of bison or a sweet potato doesn't need a back label. So just a little something or other to think about. But the iodine is not only just giving your thyroid the iodine needed for T4 and T3. So T4 is tyrosine and 4 molecules of iodine. T3 is 3 molecules of iodine. Tyrosine comes from wild animal protein, right? The amino acids. That's why it's important to be getting in the proper wild animal protein, staying away from the chicken and the poultry. I'll get into that in a minute. But that will actually trigger more spike protein in the body. That's why it's really important to be organic, grass-fed, wild animal protein that is nutrient dense. But the iodine is going to feed the thyroid the proper T4 or the proper iodine for the T4 and T3. But the conversion from the T4 to the active T3 occurs where? In the liver. So if your liver's not clean, you've got a problem with your thyroid. But not only is it going to help increase cellular energy, increase fat oxidation, increase your metabolism, and start helping with the fat burning that we've put on the pounds through this period, but it's also feeding every single one of your 100 trillion cells iodine. All cells have iodine receptor sites. So what happens when you are iodine deficient, which 96% of you all listening are iodine deficient, because it really is not coming in our diet anymore. Iodized salt is full of microplastics and disrupting absorption anyways, right? And you're getting all these toxins in that are filling in the receptor sites for iodine and not really absorbing the iodine, because your body's so weak it can't break apart the iodine from the salt to actually get used. That's why it's really important to do the accelerated iodine, which is 100% bioavailable. Okay, so all 100 trillion cells need it. So what happens if your body, all head to toe, doesn't have the iodine it needs? It gets filled with these receptor sites from, let's go back to chemistry class, from the halogen family. The bromide, the chlorine, the fluoride. Where are we getting our fluoride? Our toothpaste, our water. And Jannine, I just did a short podcast on the toxic fluoride chemicals that the government has actually recognized causes cancer. And that is in 45% of the United States waters, not just the remote rural areas that we think about, but here in Southern California, my bet is the water that comes through my pipes before it hits my filters is full of these chemicals that cause cancer. And the government is telling you this. So it's not me. The government just came out with this report.
Wow.
So then what happens is if our cells don't have enough iodine, then that fluoride is going right into the receptor sites. And what are these halogens doing? They are causing disease, the C word. They're also causing the brain to have brain fog, leading to probably dementia and Alzheimer's and these different diseases. The breast tissue, for all of you women out there, have 4 times the amount of iodine receptor sites than the thyroid. So if we don't have enough iodine in our body, guess what our increases the risk of in our bodies is breast cancer. So what do we do? So what happens is there is a process called halogen displacement. Displacement is a scientific principle back in chemistry class. Let's go back to high school. When the elements in the same group, so look at the periodic table next time you are on Google a periodic table. This makes it really easy to understand, and think about the columns. And the elements that have a lower atomic weight naturally displace the elements in the same group with a higher atomic weight. So each group has, or all of the halogens, including iodine, have an outer shell having the same number of electrons, 7. Okay, so the outer shell allows different elements in the same group to take over the same receptor sites, because the same number of electrons is the key to allowing them in. That is why fluoride and chlorine and bromine, or any of those, or fluoride, bromide, chloride, naturally displace the precious iodine. So all of these elements have the same electrons. Now, what the opposing scientific principle is competitive inhibition, where you have the same group, the one with the higher atomic weight can forcefully displace elements in the same group with a lower atomic weight by high dosing of that element. And that is why it's important to high dose with the acceleridine iodine. And you work up slowly to, you start out with 3 drops 3 times a day, because as you're feeding all your cells that iodine, you're also kicking out all of these toxins that have been built up for years, right? And if you do it too quickly, someone might have a Herx reaction where they're detoxing too quickly. But we want to get up to 25 drops 3 times a day. And when you do, you start feeling amazing, because your brain is on fire. The brain fog lifts, your thyroid is turned on, and you're starting to flush out all of these toxins. Now, this competitive inhibition also works, and I have not even mentioned this somewhere else, even on my podcast, Jannine.
Wow.
But calcium, okay, has a higher atomic weight that forcefully displaces precious magnesium. So it's the same reason with magnesium and calcium. That's why I don't recommend people, they don't need to supplement with calcium. Calcium in all the wrong places is what's causing a lot of issues. But that's why magnesium is so important. But what are they doing? They're fortifying orange juice and boxed cereals with calcium. So the other thing is there is radioactive cesium, okay? So that forcefully displaces precious sodium. So here we are told to be on a low salt diet. They stopped giving certain people during the last couple of years the saline drip. Think about it. Why do we need salt? We need salt to plump up the volume in the blood to work with the iodine to get the toxins out. So I don't want to get into that too much, because we really want to be very careful with what we're talking about here. But this is where you want to make sure you're doing your iodine, your magnesium, and your salt. So iodine, and the acceleridine is the only monoatomic iodine, which also we have enhanced with the scalar frequencies to detox the cells from radiation and the heavy metals. Lead and mercury love the thyroid. We're getting those in our environment as well, probably, from dental issues as well. So you really want to make sure that you are using the iodine to help your body detox from the heavy metals and the radiation. Now, you mentioned I am using the supplement serapeptase, which is called Ceramend, and it's a proteolytic enzyme like the one that you had mentioned earlier. And why it works so well with the spike protein is it helps break down the spike protein. And the spike protein has both protein and lipid or fat components. And the Ceramend will break down the proteins and fats, and it acts as a vacuum cleaner, just cleaning up all of the debris in your body, right? And it's also been shown to be anti-inflammatory and help reduce pain. So one interesting thing is one of my children had, during her cycle, a lot of pain, right? Well, Ceramend is part of the protocol to reduce hormonal pain and inflammation during PMS cycles. And she is very quick to tell me when things don't work. Well, she said, Mom, I just took the Ceramend and another supplement called Unlock Formula, and that helps move. It's a Chinese herbal remedy that helps move the lower abdomen during the cycle. And she said, I took those two and it really reduced the pain. She didn't have to take Advil, which she was very apt to reach for. And what else is great about it? It's been helped to with limiting the ability of biofilm to form in the body, minimizing bacteria. And then that helps because 80% of bacteria infections are caused by biofilm. And if you have a bacterial infection, what happens to your immune system? It is lowered because it's fighting the bacteria over here. So it's helping the immune system as it's cleaning out the body from the spike protein. The accelerated thyroid has been really helpful in that because the thyroid is the master endocrine gland, and most people are experiencing the hypothyroidism, partly from the spike protein, partly from the higher toxin burden in the environment and the food supply. Even if we're trying to eat our organic vegetables and fruits, the overspray from the GMOs and the glyphosate, it's getting into our bodies, you guys. It's our food supply and our environment are under such threat. So we have to be doing everything we can. Now, the accelerated thyroid optimizes thyroid function. It's formulated to detox the thyroid from the toxins and the radiation. We use scalar frequencies added in. We use Ayurvedic herbs in there to help with water drainage. We call it drain dampness in Chinese medicine. And it also helps with thyroiditis, thyroid cysts, goiters, that sort of thing. But it optimizes all of the endocrine glands, eliminates the water retention associated with the spike protein and all the side effects. I've also had people come to me say, Sara, I'm starting the accelerated thyroid. I don't feel like I need my antidepressants anymore. Most people, Jannine, on antidepressants or on anti-anxiety drugs actually are just suffering from hypothyroidism, and their doctors are not testing their thyroids. So if you take anything from what I'm saying today and you are on an antidepressant, go back to your blood test and see if your doctor did the full thyroid panel and not just the TSH, because I have my best friends that say, well, no, my doctor says my thyroid's normal and all they tested was TSH. And when you fix your thyroid, usually your mental health issues go away. So the accelerated thyroid with the acceleridine is a 1-2 punch to really help with the brain fog, the mental illness, but also the physical, mental energy, and getting your endocrine system back on track. And being that your thyroid is your master endocrine gland, that is going to affect your adrenals, which we are seeing are getting really depleted from the spike protein. And the supplement called adrenaline is an adrenal glandular that we are seeing that is really helpful to rebuild and support the adrenals to get you back on track. I have heard from everybody, I'm so tired. I'm so tired. I want to go work out. I want to do all the right things, but I can't. Well, that can help you. So with the acceleridine, the accelerated thyroid, the adrenaline, that is helping the whole adrenal, the endocrine system to be supported. Now, the Nuke No More, which I don't talk enough about, and I take it daily, is a supplement that works with the acceleridine to zero you out of all the non-ionizing and ionizing radiation. And what we're finding is there's graphene oxide and there's other heavy metals in your body now. So you literally have become an antenna. Literally, right? So we are becoming these magnets, and then we're on these phones all day long, me included. It's like my appendage. It is literally, I'm empty if I'm not holding it. I am guilty. But what we need to do is we need to combat it. We need to put little stickers on your phones and your computers and that sort of things to protect you from the outside. But from the inside, the Nuke No More helps detox you from all the non-ionizing and ionizing radiation and lessens the DNA damage done through this whole process. With the increase in estrogen dominance that's occurred, I've used calcium D-glucarate, which helps the liver's glucuronidation pathway, and it's a way to detox from the excess estrogens. A lot of people use DIM. DIM is full of the cruciferous vegetables, and a lot of people can't break those down, and me included. And it was very interesting because my own husband, I've got a few of my mentors and practitioners for my own family, and one of them recommended a DIM supplement for my husband to help with estrogen dominance. And I looked at him, I said, I wouldn't take that because it's going to backfire. He goes, I'm going to do exactly what he tells me to do. I said, okay. So within 2 days, fire headaches, okay? Major fire headaches, which are related to the liver because the liver's backed up. So these sulfur vegetables, the broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, bok choy, what is happening, they are backing up the sulfur detox pathways because of the infiltration of the glyphosate in our food supply. So you might have been able to eat all of these things 10 years ago and not now. When you heal yourself and your gut's healed, you might be able to use them in moderation, but you sure shouldn't be concentrating them in a supplement because that might backfire. So the calcium D-glucarate works with detoxing the body of these estrogens, but in the gut. So it's going after them in the gut and binding them in the gut versus in the liver. So that is something that it can be helpful. The accelerated silver is the reason that I was able to test positive multiple times and never have any symptoms. And it devitalizes foreign pathogens, improves the immune system. We even program it with scalar frequencies to go after what we're talking about. But it is the only silver that goes through a water implosion technology that strips away any rogue frequencies. So you think about frequency and frequency healing, which might be new to some of you listening, but think about if you got an ultrasound or the way you listen to the AM or FM radio in your car, that's frequency, right? So we embed the good healing frequencies into my accelerated products, and we take out the rogue frequencies. We also use microclusted water technology for better absorption. So a lot of things, we take a lot of different steps with our silver than no other company would ever do. And we do the same with our accelerated copper and our accelerated gold. Mentioning the copper, what has been super interesting is everybody has been high dosing in what over the last couple of years?
Zinc.
Well, not the zinc's a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it competes with copper. So, and the spike protein depletes copper. And guess what else depletes copper? Uric acid and fatty liver and insulin resistance. So we've got this huge, explosion of different factors that have taken our copper down to 0. And copper helps with fat burning, helps with so many key mechanisms in your body. It's important for hair and eyes and skin and bones and collagen, but it's also important for fat loss. And actually, what they have shown, and I've had looked at some studies where if you supplemented with copper, it actually, and you didn't change the diet, it actually reduced the uric acid and the risk of fatty liver and insulin resistance. So there's this whole thing with copper. And so with the accelerated copper, why I'm so excited about it, I actually have it sitting right here because I just took it, is it's liquid. And most copper supplements are just pills that have very low absorption. But with the copper, I spray it in my eyes because sometimes my eyes will go blurry from just stress and staring at the screen too much. It's anti-inflammatory. It's really good for the eyes. You can also nebulize it with it and to get it into the body in a much more effective way. But I spray it on my face for vanity reasons. But you can also use it on cuts and things like that on a topical way. So the copper has been an amazing addition. It is also what you need if you are anemic. You're not necessarily anemic because low iron. You've got plenty of iron in your body, but it's not getting to where it needs to go. And the copper is the key that opens the door to put the iron to where it needs to go. So that is the key. And I have anemia. I fought anemia myself, but I also have it in one of my children. It is an issue that we've been fighting since she literally came out of the womb. The doctor said she was anemic. And so the copper has made a huge difference. Another thing that I've noticed is really helpful is I mentioned that the spike protein inhibits that fat and protein, or the fat and protein metabolism in the liver. And a supplement called Capex helps break down the fat and protein and helps with the digestion. It boosts the ATP even more and the AMPK, which promotes energy at the cellular level, lowers inflammation, lowers the bad cholesterol, helps with the mitochondria. But you take that with the accelerated keto, which really is more of a fasting supplement. And we're changing the name because of that, because keto is great for some people. My son can eat 5,000 calories, all the fat he wants. I can't. My daughter can't. My husband can't. My other daughter can't. So, everybody's different. You've got to eat according to your DNA and your profile. But this supplement helps everyone. It shuts off your cravings for sugar. It helps your body tap into its own fat stores. So then what's happening is your liver is able to cleanse, because it also has extra herbs in there to cleanse the liver at the same time while you're intermittent fasting. And it turns that liver fat, that saturated liver fat, into unsaturated fat, so the body can burn it much easier and turn it into ketones. So it works really well with the Capex to help the fat and protein metabolism and support fat burning and increases ATP production. Magnesium, I mentioned that participates in over 600 different biochemical reactions in the body, but 80% of people are deficient. GABA, magnesium helps promote GABA in the body. Some people need to take GABA on its own, and GABA not as just a natural neurotransmitter that helps with the brain relax and stress levels, but it's actually shown to be a key part of fat burning. So those are the main things. There's one more, choline and inositol, that we've seen helps with liver detoxification, and that can help as well. But I wanted to go, I went through these in order of importance. So I want, if people are overwhelmed and they just want to start with one or two things, you want to start with what we talked about at first. And I would say it's the accelerated silver is super important to keep that immune system strong. The ceramide, the accelerated thyroid, and the accelerated copper. So those would be the most important.
Okay. What's in K-Pax? Just out of curiosity. I was trying to figure out, as you were mentioning it.
I would have to look up the ingredients on my website, but it's all there. It's a kind of a sidecar to the accelerated keto. Accelerated keto is the one that puts you into ketosis, helps with the fat burning, starts cleansing the liver. But for people that are having that nausea when they eat the protein and fat, the K-Pax really helps and kicks in.
Okay, cool. So I have a question. And you had mentioned sodium, you had mentioned salt. This is something that is on my mind because I've been diving into the Quintins quite a bit and the ampules, and I know you have those on your site. And I would love for you to kind of share with us a little bit on that aspect of sodium. So because I have some folks who are like, man, I don't want to really like eat a bunch of salt because I know that causes issues, but I'm like, you need electrolytes, your body's not getting them in. So this is where Quintins, I would love for you to talk to us a little bit about those guys.
And I've had Robert Slovak on my show. So anyone who really wants to dive into it, search Robert Slovak on Accelerated Health TV and radio show, and he gives you a full lesson with slides. So essentially, we came from the ocean, and our blood plasma, the ketone or the quintessential, has matched the same composition of electrolytes and minerals as our blood plasma. So when you go to the market or you go on Amazon and you're picking out some electrolyte formulas, those have been manufactured by some guy who thinks, oh, well, I'm going to put more of this one in and a little bit of less of that one, and it has different ratios, where the ketone or quintessential essentially is the same exact ratio of what our blood plasma is. So our body just bathes in it. And it's these little patches. And I actually had this conversation with my daughter this morning about bloat, because the wrong salt, the table salt, the iodized salt, is full of microplastics and stripped of all of the minerals other than sodium, and it will make you retain water. It will bloat you. Sodium and potassium, there's a sodium and potassium pump on the inner and outer side of the cells, and that extracellular water, that inflammation in the body, the water retention, will come from eating the wrong salts and not enough of the right electrolytes. The ketone or the accelerated and ancient salt, same thing, over 62 minerals, has the potassium and the magnesium, the chloride all in there, and that helps balance and get that water, that hydration intracellular, so into the cell. If anyone wants to listen to Heather Hineker and I talk about it on my podcast, we go into it on the InBody podcast that we did, where the InBody measures body composition, your fat, your skeletal muscle, your visceral fat, your phase angle, and your intracellular versus extracellular water. You could stand on the scale and be 4 pounds less, but be really dehydrated and have low intracellular water, but have a ton of inflammation. The bathroom scale doesn't tell you anything. So where accelerated ancient salt and the ketone come in is they're giving you that intracellular hydration and really, and that's where the energy comes from. So your energy does not come from food. Your energy comes from hydration, and you could actually dehydrate your body by drinking too much water.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I think a lot of people have the other thought process. I see folks carrying around jugs of water that are, gallons, and they're like, I'm doing all the things, doc, I'm eating well, I'm drinking all my water, but I still feel like crap. And I'm not, I'm fatigued. What's going on? So let's talk about that for a second.
So you need the electrolytes. So if there's no sodium and potassium inside and outside the cell, the water can't get into the cell. So it's just floating, and you're just carrying a whole bunch of excess water extracellularly And then a lot of people are eating the processed foods and drinking alcohol that's dehydrating, or they're starting their day with coffee. I'm not against coffee, but it does dehydrate you, right? And then also your adrenals will get depleted from, if you're not hydrating your body with the right salts. That's why people are actually putting salt or accelerated salt in their coffee as a trick to, but you also want to make sure you're drinking the water to back that up. But then the adrenals get burnt out, right? Because we're all stressed and we're full of fear. The adrenals sit on top of the kidneys get inflamed, you retain a ton of water, but that water's making you feel bloated. So then you're not wanting to drink water. And it gets to be this vicious cycle.
I'm glad you explained it that way, with the vicious cycle and feeling bloated, because there's a lot of folks that they're like, yeah, I'm drinking my water and I don't feel any better. And this is something that is interesting, because I have a lot of people that'll also take electrolyte drinks or drink, Gatorades and things of that nature in addition to their water. And they'll be like, gosh, I feel so bloated, I don't feel any better. And it's really hard. And I'm sure you found this too, to explain to folks how it's not getting in your cells, you're still dehydrated. And it's like, what? How is that possible?
Right.
Do you think, with the Quinton and those things, do you think that someone could, because I know there's protocols where you literally fast and you just use those ampules to replenish the body. Have you ever done that? I haven't. So I was just curious if you ever did a fast where you just did those ampules.
Well, I intermittent fast almost every day. And I do a combination of those and the accelerated salt and the Olaloa, which is on just more of like a multivitamin. So it's a full multivitamin powder, but it doesn't break a fast. So I do all of those because I work out, I do sauna, so I sweat a lot. And sweating is the best way to get your toxins out because your skin is your largest organ. So I have, and I also know that the ketone is used during hydrotherapy. So they'll give you a whole bunch during a colonic to hold in and let your body absorb. And if you hear Robert Slovak's story, he was introduced to the ketone when he was on his deathbed in South America somewhere, I can't remember, and he was not going to be able to get airlifted out to where he needed to go, and he took 6 doses of that, and it literally brought him back to life. And that's where he goes, oh my God, this is something I need to bring to the US. So it is very powerful, and it's amazing because it's just this little pouch or ampule that you just put in your mouth. Super fun to take. You can't, kids can't complain about taking it because it's just so easy. And it's really powerful because your body is taking in what it wants to bathe in. It's kind of like when you eat a box of Pringles or a can of Pringles, and you keep eating them and keep eating them and keep eating them, and the appetite doesn't ever say, I've had enough food, because you didn't give your body anything it wanted. But then you have a prime rib steak and you can't finish it because your body's like, oh my God, this is so nutrient dense. And your brain says, oh, I just got what I needed. I don't need very much. That's where the diet comes into this whole protocol, Jannine. And I want to make sure we touch on this and where the fast food, the processed foods, even the organic, ketogenic protein bars, those things are traps because it is causing the high fructose and the hidden sugars are tricking your brain that you need more food. These foods are actually lowering ATP. We talked about the importance of ATP, and it's actually lowering ATP, taking away energy out of your body. But then what happens is there's this survival switch that is triggered by too much uric acid from a diet full of these processed foods. Then what happens? There's an increase in fat storage. So uric acid from the fructose intakes causes an increased production of and a decreased burning of the fat. So the body said, oh, well, I'm in survival mode. I need to increase fat storage. And then what else happens? It lowers your metabolism because we need to save all of our energy to fight the tiger later on. It lowers that ATP and the energy. It increases oxidative stress throughout the body. So when you are eating the processed foods, even though you think they're healthy, I will even go to my local health food store and get organic soup. And on the back of it, it will say organic cold pressed canola oil. These seed oils are really inflammatory to the body, increases the oxidative stress, and you're getting an increase in insulin resistance. So just by an increase in uric acid in the body, it increases insulin resistance, which makes more glucose available to the brain for fuel during survival, which increases overall insulin resistance. But that is going to cause your body to store more fat. And you also get more of an increase in leptin resistance. And that leptin is the signaling to your brain to say, stop eating. So if you have leptin resistance, your leptin is screaming to your cells like the kids. If you're a mom and you've been screaming at the kids, they stop listening to you, right? It's the same thing. So the leptin stops listening, or the brain stops listening to the leptin, and then you will increase your appetite and you will eat more. These foods also, these companies aren't dumb. They increase the appetite. So when you eat that morsel of processed foods, you're triggering your brain that you actually want more food. Now sit with that for a minute. When you eat food, aren't you supposed to be less hungry than you were a second ago? And now all of a sudden you're more hungry. So something's going on that's not natural. When you eat natural food the way God intended it, your body will tell your brain that I've had food for energy and I've had enough. So all of these things are happening, and there's so many triggers and from the signals from the gut to the brain to make you addicted to fructose and sugar, more so than with cocaine or heroin or even alcohol. There's 3 pathways to the brain for sugar addiction versus these harder drugs. So your brain is wired to want that sugar. Why? For survival, because it's quick energy and it's easy to store as fat.
And I mean, it makes sense, right? It makes sense that we would oh, how do I say this without sounding terrible? It makes sense that they would go after that pathway. Let's go with that it's the most marketable and the easiest way to manipulate us to, one, buy more. And then now the fallout. I don't know which came first. I hope that evil wasn't there. You know what I mean? I hope that it was really set out for monetary reasons, which people could argue that would be evil too. I'm just talking myself in a circle here.
No, I mean,
there's no good way. Yeah, exactly. Follow the money. That's where it goes. And unfortunately, we have the fallout now of what it does to our health, but also, why it's confusing so many folks is to I don't know how many people come to me every week I talk to where they're like, I don't even know what to eat anymore. I'm just stopping eating because it's just not working for me. And more than anything, it's just not getting into the traps, like you said, Whole Foods and not just Whole Foods, any natural food store, there's just as much junk in there. It doesn't mean, I did a whole episode once as a joke with a friend of mine where we're like, Whole Foods brand cereal, no calories because it's from Whole Foods, and this is way back when I first started podcasting, but this is the thing though, right? We think like that. We think we walk into Whole Foods, it's like everything is like, oh, it's going to be healthy. And
no, it's really frustrating, and it's really hard as a mom because you're telling your kid that you've got to eat this way, and they think, Mom, no one else is eating this way. And I go, I know, and that's why they're all sick. And I said, just wait 10 years and you will see the difference between you and them, because And they're seeing the difference
She's seen it
mentally
now.
right now, because I hardly know kids that aren't on some sort of medication mentally, ADHD, and that's been normalized. So that's a whole nother discussion.
The whole ADHD thing. I mean, it's just like, people will tell me, I've got ADHD. I'm like, it's like, okay, let's look at your diet. Let's look at everything else and see if you really have ADHD, or if you have a fructose or a, vitamin deficiency or mineral deficiency, or toxic overload of the brain. Your brain's just straight up inflamed. Your liver never, oh my goodness, there's so many things. I'm sure we could sit here for 4 hours and talk about all of the things wrong, and how we'd like to change them all. So folks who are listening, guys, it starts with you. All of us can band together and spend our money in other places. You do not have to put your money to fund these experiments on us, really, for lack of a better term. Don't have to do it. So Sara, tell us, where can folks find you at the, of course, Accelerated Health Products and all of that? And tell us about the radio show too, the TV show. TV show.
Yeah.
My dad calls it is a TV show. My dad calls podcast radio shows, so I call him that now. But I meant podcast. All the things. Tell us all the things. I'm going to talk myself in circles again today. Twice.
Well, you can find everything at sarabantahealth.com, and my group coaching is a great place to start because it's free. And I touch base with you on a daily basis. It's a place where you can ask questions. I post articles and videos and fun facts to keep you motivated and educate you, so you take the power over on your health and feel in control. And that's where all my articles are, my podcasts. You can also find my podcast, Accelerated Health TV and Radio Show, on over 100 different podcast outlets. So it's very easy to find, and even some podcasts with Jannine on there. So reach out to me. Happy to put together a protocol for anyone who's listening and doesn't know where to start. You can email me directly through my website too.
Awesome. Sara, thank you so much for being a wealth of knowledge and a great resource for folks. It's just great to have you on the team of helping folks, pro people. I don't even know what else to say other than let's save the planet and the people. Something. We don't want to get too depressing here, but nevertheless, thank you again for coming on, and there's no doubt we'll have more conversations in the future because there's so many different things out there to talk about. So thanks again.
Thank you.
Hey, fellow health junkie. Thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in, please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.